Hello and welcome back. ah, episode 11, I guess. Here we are. Grab your coffee. I have coffee today. Oh, it's so good. And I haven't been drinking my coffee when it's been warm, so it's really nice because it's like the perfect temperature right now. So if you're making a cup, I'll wait for you. You know that feeling when you've made like the perfect cup of tea or coffee? That's what I'm experiencing right now. Okay. So I'm probably going to have to heat this up, but it's fine. Okay. So we are going to carry on. As uncomfortable as it is, I have come to the realization that the world just needs a little bit more kindness and love. And with that being said, there are certain individuals that need to learn more kindness and love. And with that being also said, we walk along these paths and people come and people go. And that is something one has to come to terms with. So I believe that I've always had this feeling or sense that I have always had to walk away from many people. And it was for myself, for my love that I had for myself, for the value that I hold, the respect that I have. And when doing so, I do believe that I always did it with love. And it may have hurt the other person, but I was never cruel. And I was never intentionally hurtful. I was quiet. I was silent. I would almost disappear from their reality or their timelines. Or I would have to say goodbye. And when I said goodbye, it was always with love in my heart. And I've always just operated that way. I've always felt this desire to embody love so that others can feel what love is. So, it's so good. Oh, it's so nice. All right, so we are going to carry on, and I'm going to go, I guess, the episodes may be a little bit muddled because no, the episodes are going to be a little bit muddled because one that I had planned to put out or post, I'd like to play now. So I'm going to allow it to play for you, and then I'm going to enjoy my coffee, and then I'll talk to you when you've watched it. Okay, bye.
to be true. And when you dance, I'm in the groove. You make me move. You make me move.
Okay, we're back. My coffee's finished. Okay, so as I was speaking about having to leave people as I continued to evolve and change, as you can note in my appearance in that period of time. This period of time was a couple of years. So it was maybe like 6 years. And something that I've realized and something that I have just come to understand is I have always strived to truly work on my vessel and to take pride in what my appearance is. And I've always strived to better myself. I have always continued to really work and push myself past what I believe I'm capable of. And that video is just a depiction of the transformations that I experienced and how beautiful each one of them were. And on the note of the self-esteem and, you know, the relationship aspect, it was never shown on the exterior. It was always just felt internally. And something that I always felt was this feeling of loneliness. And I was always surrounded by so many people, and I was always making friends wherever I went. I still am. I am so friendly to others, and I really strive to leave an impact on the individuals that cross my path. And I really strive to share my light and give them the love that I embody. And, you know, I watched a video today about, let me first go to the career path. So I was dancing professionally, and I was studying, and I was teaching. So with that, I have always just wanted to be a top achiever. So in my university years, I graduated with my degree in dance, cum laude. And that was my goal, is to be a top achiever when I finished my university studies. And the same applied when I continued my studying after tertiary education. And I explained to you that I qualified for my ballet teachers in 6 months, where it should be a year. And with that being said, in that video, I was holding a trophy, because I even drew a trophy and I stuck it up on the study wall. And it said that I was going to win the award for the highest candidate's mark for that examination. And I did. And that's where we go back to this and the visualization and the manifestation and just how I'm able to manifest what I set out to achieve. But I need you to understand that it doesn't just transpire around you. You do need to put in the effort and the action that is required for you to accumulate that reward. So I then also was doing the 2 exams I had written to get permission. I think I was the only student that they gave permission to do 2 exams because I was so adamant. And I, again, for all my exams, I would roughly get around 95 to 98% for my examinations. And it's just something that I have truly, I'm proud of it. I'm proud of I'm filming these videos extremely late. So the previous episode was like 4 in the morning and this is now 2 in the morning. So, and you know, when I'm told to do it, I listen. So we're doing it. And my vocabulary may be a little bit delayed just because my brain is, obviously it's had a full day. And today's been a very busy day. So with regards to the pride that I have, I've always taken pride in my work and being a top achiever and ensuring that my work is produced beautifully. I put a lot of effort into what I am doing and the results show. So I do feel a sense of pride with that attribute that I have within myself. And with the dancing, I had to make a decision to continue dancing professionally or stop dancing professionally. And I had just reached the peak of my career. I was really thriving and I was doing so well, but I had to make this decision, and the decision was to settle down in the sense of having a more common routine. So I gave up dancing professionally, and it was one of the most difficult decisions I've had to make. But I do not wish to change it for anything, because I have been able to share the passion that I have for that art. And I've been able to give it to so many dancers that I trained. So with that being said, I then opened a dance studio. And boy, oh boy, oh boy, was it thriving. It was doing so well. And I was so passionate about what I was doing. And when you are so passionate with your work, it's just natural for everything to arrive, because you are a magnet. You are you're magnetizing it towards you. I don't even know if that's a word. And I was married, and at this stage I was happy, but there were moments where I was not so happy. And then the moments of not being so happy overrode the moments of happiness. And I go back to the video that I discussed now before my train of thought went somewhere else. And before I continue with the developments of my story, because this is truly where my awakening began, soon after, because of the trauma that I had experienced. And I'm speaking my truth because I believe that it needs to be shared. And it's because I think there are many that need to hear it for their own healing journeys, and to strive to become the best version that you can be, regardless of your circumstances. So this video that I came across today was by Danny Morel, and he's such a beautiful, beautiful speaker. He is such a wise soul. And he really did define such a term that's been very predominantly used, and I do believe that it's thrown out there very quickly, and that is narcissist. Okay, so you all understand what a narcissist is, the term narcissist, but there's no such thing as narcissist. So the way that he describes this, and I do want to reference him, if you have the narcissist on the side and somebody that's not a narcissist, what narcissism is essentially, how he says it's not narcissism, it's the presence of fear. So it's somebody that's living in fear-based energy. And then you've got somebody living in love. So the person that's living in this fear-based mentality is somebody who is separate. So they are separate to source because they are in fear. They are separate to themselves. They are separate to love. And they are most often in victim energy. So they always believe that something or whatever's going on is happening to them. It's always to them. It's what's happening to them. So they become victims. And then they also have resistance. So they are always resisting any situation, any person. There's just the resistance is very prevalent. And the love is all about oneness. So it's not separation, it's oneness. You are connected to yourself, to source. And you are in creator energy, not victim mentality. So the victim, like I say, it's happening to them. And the creator is saying it's happening for them, because they're creating from it. They're creating a different narrative to the current circumstance or situation. And instead of resistance, they are in allowance. So that term I am throwing away, and I speak of fear and love. And then you'll understand where I'm going. And he does it so well. I'll put the link to the video where he really narrates it quite beautifully. So to give you an idea now of the situation that I'm in, I am love, and I am with somebody who's in fear. But I'm so grateful, and he says it in the video, because we chose one another. Our souls chose one another because we are mirrors of one another. We are mirrors of each other, and I needed this mirror for me to become the highest version of myself, for me to become the best version of myself, for me to see things in this mirror that is in front of me that makes me want to be the best I can be and always choose love. So, with that being said, there was a lot of abuse in the sense of psychological, emotional, and there were times where physical abuse were extremely close. And on some occasions, I was in the way of the aggressive behavior. My physical body was in the way. And it was scary. It was lonely. It was painful. And I had to mask what was going on. I had to live in fear and live with joy, sharing joy. So while I was experiencing darkness and being terrified and truly hurt, I was exuding joy and love. And that is something that I have done throughout my journey. Is the darker it became, the more light I became for others, but more so for myself. And I mentioned this in another video where somebody, people obviously knew you in those periods of time and watched you grow. And this individual said to me that she saw my soul dimming. So my light was actually dimming. And she couldn't see me anymore. She said when she looked into my eyes, it was just dark. It wasn't me anymore. So I had lost myself so much in that union. And it was a choice, because everything is a choice. It was a choice that I chose. I wrote this before I came here. We wrote this because we both need to learn from one another. And essentially, I then fell pregnant. And what a gift Mason is. And when I fell pregnant, that is when my eyes started to open to the circumstances that I was living in and how I was living. So I mentioned the triggers, and if something was not done with ease, a trigger would go off. And when a trigger went off, it was terrifying to be in that space. And I would try to prevent the triggers. And when Mason was born, I realized that this is no way to live. And then I realized the substance abuse that was going on, that I didn't take too much note of. But now with the child entering the world, I took more note of it. And it got to a stage where the substance abuse was affecting the triggers even more, which was making it more terrifying. And essentially, when Mason was born, I realized one evening that I could not continue to live like this. So that severed. And in that sever, it's a big trauma because it's a loss. It's a loss of a very long time with somebody, and a union of two souls that made a promise to one another. And I just could not. There was no capacity in me anymore. I had truly lost who I was. I didn't know who I was anymore. I had such a big mask on that the mask was covering who I really was. And because I wore the mask so often, I really didn't know who was behind it anymore. So essentially, that is where the beginning of my trauma truly began. And it first began I have to ensure that how I share this story is from love, but I need to also ensure that I'm speaking my truth so that people understand what I really went through. So I'm just asking. It ended the night that substances were consumed and the said individual wanted to drive myself and our 6-month-old baby home. And I refused to get in the car. And with the substance abuse prevalent, there was some violence, and the car keys needed to be hidden to ensure that we would not leave. I then called my parents to come and collect us and take us back. At this stage, I had decided that I was leaving. So I was in the car with my father. Mason was in the car with me, and said individual was in the car with my mother. And we drove back home, and I proceeded to pack a suitcase of overnight clothes for myself and Mason. And I said that I was leaving. There was much screaming that occurred. My dad stayed in the house to ensure that I was safe, and we left. The next day, it was either the next day or a few days after I had left that evening, that said individual had just disappeared with our car and with personal items of value, as well as family heirlooms of mine, and I could not get a hold of them. I didn't have any means of transport to get to my teaching, which is my work, and I had to arrange and buy a car that day. So I was very fortunate that the dealership brought the car to the studio, and I was then able to purchase the vehicle and have a mode of transport. At this stage, it started to get quite nasty. And one can understand that because of the pain. Whenever somebody is hurting another individual, it is because it is a mirror of what pain they went through as a child, or pain that they have experienced in life. So there is absolutely no evaluation or dissecting of this on a psychological level, but I wanted to gather some more things for myself and Mason. At this stage, I was locked out of our home. I was unable to gain access into the home for a month. I did not have access to clothes, Mason's things. The home was chained, locked, closed, and the garage was turned off to open and locked from the inside, so I could not get in at all. And I filed for a divorce, and at that stage I was afraid. I was terrified of this person, that they may come after me. And I tried to apply for a protection order. I was unsuccessful in doing so because of the judicial system. And it was heartbreaking. So with that, I eventually, once the home was opened and they had left with what they owned, I entered the home to discover that I was left with barely anything. The fortunate aspect to this is that Mason's belongings were still there. So his cot, his compactum, his clothes were not taken, but I was left with no furniture. Family heirlooms were taken. Inheritance pieces were taken. And items of great value were taken. I then had to live with my parents for 3 months. And during this period, there was absolutely no contact made towards Mason, his well-being, how he was. At this stage, there was no contribution financially either. And one must understand that raising a baby is quite a financial strain because of what they require. So, with that being said, I was financially supporting, and the said individual had left the city to another city. And I'm unsure of the exact amount of days, but I'm going to give you just a breakdown just so that you understand when the story unfolds further, the details that need to be shared. I would say roughly it was roughly a period of about 400 days. And of those 400 days, a couple of hours were spent with Mason. In that period of time, I had an attorney who was not my attorney. I had pro bono attorneys because I was financially supporting Mason at this stage, and I had lost half of my studio at this stage because of the impact it had had on my life. And I was being followed by an attorney. I was being watched by an attorney. They would sit outside the studio and watch my whereabouts, see what I was doing, look. They would stop me in a shopping center and ask me questions. I had to tell my clients that I was putting curtains up for just, people not to see into the studio. My dancers were feeling uncomfortable with regards to the level of how much we were being watched. There was a nanny that I thought I could entrust from somebody who I thought was a trustworthy source. But this nanny was not a trustworthy source and was actually working, I do believe, for that attorney and person to basically spy on what I was doing. I had to have a social worker involved because at this stage, contact was very minimum. So it needed to be under supervision because Mason didn't know who he was at that stage of time. And Mason would, now I say this because I'm highly connected and I'm highly in tune, and I felt intuitively that something was always off, something was always wrong, there was something going on. And with regards to, okay, we'll go to the supervised contact that was put in place. My property was broken into I felt so unsafe. I had security cameras put up outside my property. I felt terrified. And I even had individuals who were checking my car to see if my car was bugged or tracked. And this went on for 2.5 years, where I struggled to get a divorce, and it was horrific. I was bullied beyond bullied by attorneys. I was questioned on my financials when there was no financial aid being supported towards Mason on the other end. And that's where I say the judicial system something has to change. Something has to change with regards to the judicial system and what is looked at and how individuals are conducting their business and how individuals are conducting themselves. Because the person that I was at that stage was broken. I was shattered. I was raising a baby all by myself. I was running a studio all by myself. I was working until 10 p.m. So I was teaching in the morning. I was teaching the whole day until 10 p.m., doing admin. I was getting roughly 2 or 3 hours of sleep. And it was brutal. And you wouldn't believe that in that period of 2.5 months is where my soul was broken. But it's where I was birthed into the most powerful being that's sitting in front of you now. And I, in that period, chose to better myself. As much as I was breaking and as much as it was going on, I chose to make my vessel as strong as it possibly could be. I was moving my body. I was doing exercise so that my vessel was strong. I was strengthening my mental, my mind, by continuously learning about mind power. I was studying. I was becoming the best version of myself that I could possibly be. And I'm going to finish it off soon, and then I'll come on for another episode, just so that the episodes don't go too long. But the process was unbearably painful. I had to show up as a strong mother, a strong teacher, a strong daughter, a strong woman, when inside I was crumbling. I was crying myself for hours on the floor, trying to understand how somebody could be so brutal towards somebody else. And that's where I go back to this. Because I'm going to end it soon, and I'll come back because my story gets so much more intense. And I'm not even sharing the exact detail. I think whatever's coming through is coming through as I had asked. And I looked and it was 44:33. As I asked for clarity on how this is going to be delivered, I am sharing what's needed to be shared for viewers to understand who I am today and how I got here. And that you are not a victim of your story. You are the creator. And I have been silently building myself. I have been silently transforming myself. I have accumulated as much as I possibly can through books and courses and watching various documentaries and history and understanding pioneers, philosophers, religion, spirituality. This person that you see sitting here, and for those of you that knew her in some stage of your life, is not the same woman that I was. Change is the only constant. And in order for your life to change, you must change. I have changed. I have grown. And I have stepped into my highest power. I have embodied love. And I am here to show you that you should always choose love. So I'm going to end it now, and then I'll come back and we can start. I might make another cup of coffee. Okay, so I'm going to go off and I'm going to come back. Okay, bye.